There are two things firefighters dislike: the way things are, and change.
Sometimes traditional ways clash with the need for change.
That's where we come in.
Slicing through the noise with insights that matter.
Welcome to Igniting the Shift Within. Your launch pad to revolutionize the way you think and work and lead.
So welcome to Igniting the Shift Within. I'm David Dashinger, and if you can't remember the last time you had a good night's rest, you came to the right podcast. Today we're speaking with Dr. Leah Kaylor. She's a clinical and prescribing psychologist and the FBI's sleep expert. Dr. Leah will show you how to take your sleep and your performance to the next level. So we'll be talking about tips and real-world hacks. We'll break down the science of sleep into practical, easy-to-use strategies to help you sleep better, recover more quickly, and enhance your overall quality of life. And Dr. Leah will share 3 tactical takeaways, actionable items firefighters can start using tonight. So our guest, Dr. Leah, is a licensed clinical and prescribing psychologist who has served as the FBI's sleep expert for the past 5 years. And with a passion for optimizing human performance, she's on a mission to help others harness the transformative power of rest, because better sleep shouldn't be top secret. So Dr. Leah shares practical science-based strategies on her YouTube channel, and she also is releasing a book that's going to have a lot of this information as well. It's going to be called If Sleep Were a Drug. Look for it on October 1st, 2025. It'll be hitting the shelves then. Dr. Leah, pleasure to have you on Igniting the Shift Within.
Thank you for having me. I love talking about sleep, so I'm here to jump into it.
All right. So we're going to cover a lot in a short amount of time. Let's start with this question. I love this question.
If there were no rules.
Kind of thinking out of the box, if there were no rules, no alarm clocks, no work schedule, no social pressures, how would your body actually want to sleep?
How would it want to sleep? Well, I think that question may be different for some people. But one thing that we need to remember is if we think back to our caveman ancestors, the way that they knew that it was time to be awake was when the sun came up, and the way that they knew that it was time to go to bed was when the sun went down. So no matter what, our body naturally wants to sleep like that. When we're sleeping the opposite way, we're in direct conflict with basically what Mother Nature intended. But also a piece of it comes into play as far as chronotypes. And that word may not be familiar to people, but words that may be familiar to people would be like an early bird and a night owl. I think that those are very more popular terms. And so the early birds, as it suggests in the name, these are people who enjoy waking up early. They just kind of naturally wake up early. Their energy is much higher in the morning, and then it kind of tapers off throughout the day. And then they do feel sleepy, normally like 8, 9 p.m. And then whenever it comes to our night owls, they prefer to sleep in. Maybe they're waking up around noon or 1 p.m. And then their energy is really much higher in the afternoon and the evening into the late night. And then they're falling asleep much later, typically after midnight. So that is something that oftentimes we often know this about ourselves, but it's also very highly connected to genetics. That has a big piece in dictating whether we're a morning bird or a night owl. But then a lot of people just fall into the category of being somewhere in the middle. So I would say that is, if we had no alarm clocks, no this, no that is a big part of what would dictate our sleep is light. Light is our most strongest cue for our brain to organize when we're asleep and organize when we're awake.
Great. And, you've reminded me of a dynamic I experienced when I was a lieutenant at a fire station that had just 2 of us there on an engine, and we both slept in the same room, and that was the room where the TV was. And if one of us wanted to go to bed at 9:30 and the other wanted to watch TV, it created a dynamic that was not optimal for either one of us probably. Right. So these are things that, subtle things that happen in the firehouse that sleep plays a huge role in. I guess what you're saying, the chronotypes would actually could be a problem as well if you got 2 different types.
Absolutely. And not just in the firehouse, which absolutely does play a role, but also whenever you're at home and you're sharing a bed with a partner, what does your schedule look like? When we are first responders and firefighters, oftentimes that may be all over the place. Maybe there is some scheduling and there's some predictability, but sometimes there's not whenever it comes to first responders. And then we have to think about our partner and their sleep needs. And so sometimes there needs to be adjustments with that. And that's something that I talk about in the book, so I won't get into it here. But sometimes that means making adjustments and talking about what that looks like, and all the way to the extreme of potentially a sleep divorce. And I know that that word or that term might seem kind of scary, but basically that means that each person is going to have their own needs, their own preferences. Maybe it's temperature, maybe it is lighting, maybe it's what time they go to bed, what time they wake up, all these different things. And so if the person, at the end of the day, we want people to get the best quality sleep that they possibly can. And so if that means sleeping in 2 different bedrooms, I think that this is something that's getting more and more popular because we need to be prioritizing sleep. And, you know, in the book, we have a whole chapter on how to navigate through that and how to negotiate that with your partner, because that doesn't mean that your relationship isn't doing well. It doesn't mean that you're not into each other. You don't want to be around each other. It's really about prioritizing sleep. So that may be something to think about also in your day-to-day life when you're not sleeping at the firehouse, but when you're sleeping in your own bed.
Wow. Yeah, that's huge. And I want to circle back to some of that, you know, kind of how do we recover from a busy shift or a long 24, 48-hour shift? Let's keep that in the back of our minds and come back around to it.
Sleep and mental health.
The next question or topic is anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress. Those seem to be something we're talking about on a regular basis in in the world of public safety. What are you observing amongst first responders regarding sleep issues, and does it connect into any of those, those things, anxiety, depression, stress?
100%. I've made a name for myself now at the FBI where I am the sleep expert, and I get tons of referrals for our employees all across the country, but all across the globe too. And oftentimes people say, "Hey, Dr. Leah, do you have any room on your schedule? I have somebody who's having sleep issues." And I'll be like, "Yeah, of course, send them over." And then, right whenever we start to dig into it, I realize, and this is very, very often, and I think that other people would recognize this as well, is that when sleep, yes, everyone can relate to having a crappy night's sleep, but oftentimes what is underlying that and making it look like a sleep issue is really untreated anxiety, depression, trauma, and stress. And oftentimes we just have the day and age that we're working in, there's so much that we're being bombarded with, and there can be a lot of challenges around seeking help, or how do I do that? Or is that okay? What if people find out? And so I think that I'm in a very lucky position where, as the sleep expert, a lot of people come to me because they're having sleep issues, and then they end up getting this like 2-for-1 of we're treating sleep issues, but we're also working on the things that are feeding into the sleep issues, because at the end of the day, I very firmly believe that they go hand in hand, and it's almost like the chicken and the egg.
Mm-hmm. EMDR and brain spotting.
Yeah, and I just want to highlight that you are also an expert at doing brain spotting and EMDR and other modalities as a clinician.
Yes, I am. So trauma is my other specialty. And yes, I'm certified in brain spotting and EMDR. And I would say that those tools come out of my toolkit very, very often. I love both, but I would say brain spotting is the one that I come to even more often because, again, a lot of our first responders probably know deep down that they need some type of support. But I think a lot of people have a lot of hesitancy around talking and around sharing. And that's how I came into both EMDR and brain spotting, is that when I came to the FBI, I had been trained in much more traditional talk therapy modalities. And I very quickly realized, like, oh, this isn't going to work with my first responders. They're not interested in talking. They're not interested in like laying down on my couch and telling me about their childhood. And that's also not the time and the place. Like for some people, yes, it is. And that's more so would be a position for some, like a community therapist or someone on the outside. But my position within the Bureau is very much, how can I get you to a place where you're meeting the mission, where you're getting a chance to perform at your peak? And so I need to get in there with some hard hitting tools. And that's how I came across both EMDR and brain spotting, is that these are very fast, rapid, effective treatments that really do produce results. And I've just been so incredibly pleased to have those in my toolkit. And I hope that more and more people find out about them, but also go out and use them, because the whole reason why I'm trying to talk about these and promote these more is that there's not a ton of talking with that. And that's very exciting to our first responders, is that, there's EMDR and there's not a ton of talking in that, but whenever it comes to brain spotting, there's even less talking. Like, I will do live demonstrations at various different conferences and whatnot. And let me tell you, it's a really boring demonstration because there's very little talking. The brain knows what it needs to do. We just need to set up the conditions to allow it to heal on its own. And so if people are thinking deep down, yeah, I probably need some help, but ain't no way I'm talking to somebody, brain spotting or EMDR would be a place to start looking in. And I can give you resources to put in the show notes.
Okay. Yeah. And I was going to say, you were a guest on Respond to Resilience with us recently, and you spoke in more detail about brain spotting. So anybody who wants to learn more about that, check out Dr. Leah Kaylor on Respond to Resilience and you'll get more info. And also to your point about first responders not preferring to talk, I think the other point is that we like fast results, and EMDR brain spotting kind of give you those, I wouldn't say instant, but very rapid results that are profound. So very powerful tools.
They absolutely are. People tend to feel better within 1 to 3 sessions. Not to say that everyone will fall into that bucket, but people do tend to feel better in a very short amount of time. Even during one session, I've had incredible results. So I would say, don't knock it till you try it. It may seem kind of weird or strange as you hear me talk about it on the other podcast episode, but have an open mind. And that's normally by the time people get to me, it's that they've had experiences that were maybe poor, or they didn't jive well with the therapist, or whatever the case may be. And so a lot of times people don't really care how it works. They just want something that does work. And in my experience, I've had nothing but very, very good results with both EMDR and brain spotting. So I can't speak highly enough about these modalities.
Excellent. Well, let's get back to sleep. It's all, I guess all roads lead home. So
They do.
Quick fixes for sleep issues.
Sleep issues. So people, we all do this. I think we look for a quick fix. I want to break this into a 2-parter. First, let's talk about over the counter, and then we'll talk about prescription meds. So stuff like melatonin, these kind of things actually work? And especially in the long term, are they effective?
Okay. So I'm glad that we're separating it into these 2 categories. So whenever it comes to melatonin, let's just go very high level, and then we'll kind of filter down into more specific. Whenever it comes to melatonin is not for nightly use. And when I say that, it is not for someone who is, I'm just a poor sleeper, I have insomnia, I'm just going to take melatonin. That's not what it's for. Your body does naturally produce melatonin, and ways that you can naturally strengthen that would be whenever you wake up, and we're talking about someone who's waking up in the morning hours, so maybe 6, 7, 8 a.m. Within that hour of waking up, going out and getting a little bit of natural sunlight into your eyes. So no sunglasses, just a few minutes, and that's enough to get into your eyes and back to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is our main timekeeper of the brain, which then regulates the pineal gland, which then regulates if melatonin is being released or not. So when we are exposing our eyes to this natural bright sunlight, if there's any melatonin that's still being released, it turns it off. It helps us be alert, and it kind of boosts that wakefulness. So it's great to do that in the morning, first thing, but also you're going to get this cascade of results that as we get closer to bedtime, which is when the sun is setting, we're talking more summertime now because it's summertime, but normally 8, 9, 10 p.m., then you should have this natural release of melatonin. And when we are talking about a normal, average, healthy sleeper, someone who is more of a day shift worker, their time is more predictable, melatonin is not a good idea for them. The people who melatonin is a good idea for would be someone who is going to be crossing multiple time zones. So I just got back from Europe. I am not someone who takes melatonin at all. However, when I was trying to shift my time or my circadian clock to several time zones ahead whenever I went to Europe and then trying to come back, that is an option for folks. Don't expect incredible, amazing results. And then the other category of folks that it would be good for would be people who are trying to shift their sleep based on shift work. And again, don't expect incredible results. So if we're talking about someone who, let's say, for example, is awake all night long because they were working a shift, and I think that this is important information because I think that there's the information out there right now is just a little bit fuzzy. And I think it's important to know that if someone is working and awake all night long because of shift work, the time in which they're getting ready to drive home or to walk home or to bike home, however they're getting home, is a very critical piece that is super, super dangerous. So a lot of times we hear information about putting sunglasses on or blue blockers or something like that to block yourself from having that natural light enter the eyes. And while that would make sense, it's also a very dangerous point in time for people to have car accidents. And, maybe if you're walking, having some type of hazardous traffic accident. So we want people to be alert enough to be able to make it home safely. Like at the end of the day, safety is the most important thing. But then once you do get home, then if you choose to take melatonin, that would be the time to take it. And then basically drop all other activities, because I'm sure you probably have errands to run and emails to check and all these different things competing for your time. But when you take that melatonin, then that is the time to prioritize sleep the most, because you still should feel quite sleepy. So it's not the time to go do your chores, unload your dishwasher, fold your laundry. It's the time to go get in bed. Then you block out all the light that you possibly can and try and get a good solid chunk of sleep there. So that's the way in which melatonin should be used. And one thing I want to just throw out there very quickly is, one of the things we don't know a whole lot about is long-term effects of melatonin use in children. So if you're a parent and you're listening and, melatonin comes in all kinds of colors and flavors and gummies and sugar-coated, it is not meant for children. And so I would strongly suggest that if you're someone out there, whether it's you or people, please stop doing that. Children should be able to get good rest. Again, it's important that they have good sleep hygiene too, and it's important that we teach them that. But melatonin is certainly not designed for nightly use for adults, and certainly should be used for nightly use in children.
Great. And again, I'll refer people to Respond to Resilience podcast with Dr. Leah. You talked a little more about dosages and finding the right quality, but let's leave that on the other podcast. And if somebody wants more info, that's where you can find it.
Prescription sleep meds.
So shifting gears a little bit, let's talk about the prescription meds, stuff like we hear about Ambien, Lunesta. What are those? What part do they play? Are they effective? And do you recommend people use them?
I'm so glad that you're asking this question, because I am also a prescriber. That's what makes me a little bit unique, and also why I feel so strongly to be able to talk about these topics is that I'm a psychologist, but I'm also a prescribing psychologist, which means that I can write scripts for these. And I will tell you, in my entire prescribing career, which admittedly I'm very early career, I have not written a single prescription for a sleep aid. And here's why. And let me preface this by saying that there will be some people out there who this is an appropriate choice for. But a lot of people, as you mentioned, want a quick fix. They want this magic bullet. They want this magic pill. And spoiler alert, in the book, I have a chapter and I say there is no magic pill. There isn't. And there are medications, like you mentioned. There are various different benzodiazepines, that are being used as a sleep aid. There are what we call Z drugs that are being used, like the Ambien and the Sonata. There are newer-ish drugs that are being used called Doras. And when it comes to all of these, none of them are perfect. And the sleep that you're getting on them is not created equal. So a sleep on a benzodiazepine is not great. Sleep on something like a Z drug is a little bit better, but it's still not as good as just natural sleep that your body produces on its own. Because when we are sleeping, we should be cycling through light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep. And when medications are on board, sometimes they're not going to allow you to cycle through the way that your body would completely unmedicated. And so I say that to say is that there will be some people who this is appropriate for, but the vast majority of people just want a quick fix, when instead what they need to do is be looking at a lot of their lifestyle choices. And that might be caffeine, that might be alcohol, that might be a wind down routine, that might be pairing this with daytime therapy, so that we're working through some of this trauma and some of these very intense, distressing things that we're seeing day in and day out. So I think that a lot of it is turning it back onto our lifestyle and taking inventory of what it is that we're doing and where we can make changes. So I would say that that's how I feel about it. But yes, there will be some people who this is an appropriate fit just based on what's going on in their life.
Great. And you kind of segued perfectly into our next topic. But before I get to that,
logging your sleep
You also spoke about taking inventory. And again, I'll refer folks to Respond to Resilience with Dr. Leah. You spoke at length about doing sleep studies and people keeping a log, right? Like a journal
Yes.
of their sleep habits and hygiene and all that, which sounds like has to happen in order for someone to really understand, like, what are they doing that's working? What are they doing that's not working?
100%. And that's something that I recommend, like, across the board. Because even if you're someone who's just listening to this because you're an avid listener of this particular podcast, chances are you can benefit from logging your sleep. Just do it for 2-3 weeks. It's not that challenging. And we can also link that in the show notes too, of like a very easy, simple, sheet that like you'll fill out one in the morning and you'll fill out one in the evening. And it's just tracking, what time did you get into bed? What time did you try to go to bed? Which those are two very different things. How was your sleep? What time did you wake up in the morning? How's your energy? What's your caffeine intake like? What was your wind down routine? Did you have alcohol? Did you have a heavy meal before dinner or before going to bed? So there's a lot of different things. And as we start to do this for several days or several weeks, some of these patterns will start to show up and you'll be able to almost diagnose or figure out a little bit of what is going on for you. And when I was working, so before the Bureau, I was at the Memphis VA Medical Center, and there I would have people that I wouldn't see anyone until they filled out at least 2 to 3 weeks worth of sleep logs so I could see it. And the reason why is that we are poor historians, and I'm not trying to put anybody into the spotlight. You can tell me how you slept last night. You can probably tell me how you slept the night before, but as it gets further and further and further back, our memory is just fuzzy because we sleep every night. And if you're someone who just generally categorizes their sleep as crappy, it's going to be hard to give me this very detailed information. And so as you start tracking in a very simple paper and pen format, you'll start to see patterns emerging, and then you can empower yourself to make those changes yourself. You don't have to make an appointment with a sleep specialist. Now, if you're making some changes, maybe you're cutting out a little caffeine, maybe you're stopping the alcohol before bed, and you're still seeing issues or you're still not sleeping as good as you want to, then maybe it's time to see a professional. But I know a lot of folks have some hesitancy around that. So if you're thinking, wow, I feel like I could improve my sleep, but I'm not ready to see a mental health professional yet, or I'm not ready to seek services, or I don't want to pay out of pocket for something like that, this would be a very simple first step, very low bar that you can do for yourself.
Optimizing caffeine intake.
All right. You brought this up a couple of times. Let's
Okay.
dive into this topic, which is, the fire service is fueled by coffee, and it's a part of, ingrained in our culture, in our routines. Let's talk about that. Best time to drink it. When should you avoid it? And especially, like, kind of give us your description of how long it lasts in the system.
Yeah. So whenever we are using caffeine, it's a stimulant. Its job is to keep us awake. Now, someone is going to get the best bang for their buck if after waking up, so when we wake up, normally our adrenaline and our cortisol are high, and that's what helps us get up, get moving, get motivated to get dressed and get on with our day and get to work on time. So a lot of people wake up and like literally they turn over and they probably have like a coffee pot on their nightstand. I feel like there's so many people out there like that. Okay, so when you're doing that, your body is already in a state of waking up. And so if you put caffeine on top of that, you're not really going to get a whole lot of bang for your buck. When you will, though, is waiting about 90 minutes after waking up. That's going to be the best time to start caffeine. Now, caffeine has a half-life, and half-life means that after a certain period of time, half of that particular substance is still exerting its effects in the body. And I like to use an example. So I'm going to show you my cup here. And let's just say that this, for those who are listening, I have a thermos here in front of me. And this would not be an unusual size. It's probably 16 ounces for someone to have coffee in. Now, whenever we talk about half-life, let's just say, for example, that I start drinking this whole thermos at 6 a.m. Now, caffeine has a half-life between 4 and 6 hours is what we're going to say. So if I drink this whole entire cup of coffee around 6 a.m., at noon, half of that amount of coffee is still going to be rocking and rolling in my system and exerting its efforts. So I think a lot of people think, I'm going to drink coffee, I'm going to have the results immediately, and then it's just going to dissipate out of my body. But it doesn't happen that quickly. So after another, we'll say 6 hours for half-life, then we still have half of that amount. And so for those of you who are just listening, I have about a fourth of the thermos of coffee still rocking and rolling in my system. But oftentimes people are not drinking coffee just at 6 a.m. and cutting it off for the rest of the day.
Right.
Oftentimes that looks like maybe Mountain Dew or Dr. Pepper with lunch. Maybe that looks like after feeling a little sleepy after lunchtime, maybe we're having another coffee or an energy drink or something like that. And so it's important to remember that you keep adding this caffeine, the half-life is still going to keep going and it's still going to stay in your system. So, oh gosh, ideally, and I know that this is challenging because, again, whenever it comes to first responders, y'all are a different and very special population. So we have to keep safety in mind, where you have to be alert and awake and you have to be aware of your surroundings and be able to keep yourself safe. But also, I don't want so much caffeine in your system that when it comes time to lay down in bed, you're absolutely wired.
Right.
So the general recommendation is 10 hours before when you plan to fall asleep. That's when you should be cutting off caffeine. For someone who's awake during the daytime, normally that's the early afternoon. So take this information and apply it to whenever your schedule is, because it's the same thing for someone who is working overnights too, right? Like having caffeine. And one of the very popular recommendations is not just downing a whole entire thing of coffee, but it's more so small amounts and often. So it would be kind of making that coffee last longer throughout your shift versus downing that and then downing a soda and then downing an energy drink. Again, everyone is going to be different and unique. There will be people who have much slower metabolism, and this is going to stay in their system much, much longer. There are going to be people who are very sensitive to this. There are also going to be people who are ultra rapid metabolizers. And for those of you who think that you are, you're probably not. You're probably just wanting to think that you are, but there are a select number of people out there who are ultra rapid metabolizers who it will move through the system very quickly. I would say that the vast majority of people who are listening are probably just that average Joe who has the half-life of 4 to 6 hours. But just keep that in mind because, you know, you do have a very wide audience base. So there may be some outliers there, but nonetheless, that is the recommendation whenever it comes to caffeine, is not necessarily having it right when you wake up. 90 minutes after you wake up is the best bang for your buck. Small amounts and often throughout the day. And then about 10 hours before your planned sleep time, that's when you should be cutting it off, because we want it to move through the body and to excrete out so that when it's time to fall asleep, you're not still absolutely wired.
Great. Thank you for that comprehensive answer.
Sure.
Well, we're in the beverage aisle.
Yes.
Let's talk about the other beverage
How alcohol affects sleep.
that's prevalent in our culture. That's alcohol. And some people, it might give them a sense of relief from anxiety or make them feel a little drowsy. But can we use that as a sleep aid? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, what should people know about alcohol and how it affects sleep?
The answer is no. And I know that that's not the answer that a lot of people want to hear, but I love science, and I think that it's important that when you hear the science behind it, that you have a better understanding. So people will say, alcohol helps me sleep. Yes, it does. It's a sedative. It is a depressant. That's what it does. It starts to inhibit parts of the brain. It starts to kind of have them shut down. That is what it does. So yes, it will make you feel sleepy. However, the quality of sleep that you're getting is extremely poor. So you're not getting this deep restorative sleep. Your sleep is going to be much more fragmented. Your ability to get into REM sleep, which is rapid eye movement sleep, is going to be much more challenged. Also, we didn't necessarily get into this, and I'm going to do like a very brief nutshell of deep sleep. You can think about that as being so important for your physical health, and I'm just making this very simple and straightforward. And then REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, is very, very important for our emotion regulation, for creativity, for problem solving, a lot of mental activities that are happening. And just some really interesting research out there that I just recently came across was and this was more so on students, but we can apply this to anyone. So when we think about students, their whole job is to be learning and taking information and integrating that into their existing neural networks of knowledge. And when someone learned information and then 2 nights later had alcohol, it was impacting their ability to take that information and to store it in long-term memory and to integrate it into the neural network. So let's take this more specific for firefighters. Say, for example, you find out a new technique that's really important, and this is something that you need to know because when you're on the job, you need to be alert, you need to be fast, you need to be on your toes. And learning this new particular technique, we're just using as an example, would be really important that we need to put this into long-term storage and we need to be easily accessing it when we need it. Right. So if you are taking this information, so during the daytime, the information comes in and it's kind of in this like short-term like holding pattern. You can kind of think about it as being like in your inbox. Mm-hmm. But at nighttime, that is the time in which this is taken to the long-term storage. And that's where it's put where it needs to be in the various different, say, sequence of events that you might do where this technique might fall into place. So if we are drinking alcohol and then we're trying to fall asleep, your ability to take that new technique and integrate it into your memory ain't happening. Mm-hmm. And so it's going to be so incredibly important that that's just one example, but there are so many other pieces that come along with this. So REM sleep, another thing is emotional detox. Okay, well, that's going hand in hand with all of the very distressing, upsetting things that we're seeing all day long. Okay, so alcohol may help us wind down and it may help us fall asleep. And for those just listening, I'm doing air quotes. But then in REM sleep, that's our emotional detox. That's our time to kind of strip out the emotion and to get rid of things that aren't serving us anymore and to try and level out our mood. And when we aren't able to get into good quality REM sleep because of alcohol, well, sorry about your luck. You're gonna be stuck with that. And then often the next day we're feeling much more moody, much more cranky. Maybe we're having a hard time. And a lot of people don't even realize this. That's what's so interesting is that there's also research out there on people who were trying to decipher social cues. So whether that was body language, whether that was facial expressions, and yet they were doing very poorly, and yet they didn't even know that they were doing very poorly. So that's really important for us to take into consideration is if we're drinking alcohol, our REM sleep isn't good, our ability to interact with, what about your coworkers? What about your boss? What about the general public? Because as a first responder, you're going to be interacting with lots of other people, not to mention friends and family. And so if you aren't on your game whenever it comes to mood and social interactions, that could certainly be impacting things as well. So there's a lot of different things that comes down to it. Also, your sleep is going to be very fragmented. And also alcohol is a diuretic. So it's going to make you wake up more to have to go to the bathroom. So at the end of the day, my answer is no. I know that this is, I'm going to call it a crutch that a lot of people use to help them fall asleep. However, I would recommend trying your best to cut back as much as possible. If this is something that needs to be part of your routine, having it earlier in the day, not right before bed. But again, in a perfect world, no alcohol, because it's just going to impact your sleep in nothing but negative ways.
Great. Yeah. And I will put my hypothesis out there that this all changes as we age, right? The ability to metabolize alcohol and its effect on sleep also probably changes as the years go on. It's, we may have been able to process or drink more when we were younger and be able to kind of slough it off and have get up the next day and have a good day. But sometimes as the years go on, it gets harder and harder to consume alcohol and be productive and mentally present as we were back in the day.
Absolutely. And as we continue to age, like through adulthood into later adulthood, a lot of people think that older adults don't need as much sleep, and that's not the case. It's that they have a harder time achieving that sleep. And so we need to do as much as we possibly can to protect sleep and to be getting good, high quality sleep, because again, later down the road, it's only going to cost us, whether that's mentally, whether that's physically, whether it's a combination of the both. And so you have nothing but good things to reap from improving your sleep quality.
As we're starting to get into wrap-up mode, I'm going to ask you maybe some rapid-fire questions, if we can do it, like short bursts.
I'll do my best.
What to know about napping?
Let's talk about napping. So let's say coming off a long shift, you're trying to catch up. Is it effective to take a nap? Is that going to affect the quality of the sleep that's coming up this coming night, is that going to help or hurt to say take a long nap and then try to get a good quality sleep during that evening that's coming up?
So is this someone who has worked a night shift or a day shift?
Let's call it a 24 because that's pretty common for firefighters.
So I would say first and foremost is always going to be safety. Like if you know that you are so sleepy that you're having a hard time functioning, that you're having a hard time keeping your eyes open, especially whenever it's your shift is over and you're probably going back home or you're going somewhere else, safety is number one. So if that means closing your eyes for a nap, then that's what you need to do. Whenever we're talking about a nap, there's a couple of different things that you could do. You could do what we call a caffeine nap if you need to, just depending upon what the rest of your day looks like until the time which you actually get to lay down for a long sleep. So a caffeine nap might look like having a cup of coffee, taking a 20-minute nap, and then by the time that you wake up, you're going to have the effects of caffeine and you're going to have less sleep inertia from having that nap. And a 20-minute nap is a nice period of time in which you're not going to be impacting your long sleep as much as you possibly could compared to a nap that's in longer duration.
Routines for winding down.
And this happened to me a lot when I was acting captain, shift commander, laying in bed. My mind was completely active thinking about, what if the next call comes in? What am I going to do if it's this kind of call? Just being anticipatory, could not quiet my mind, could not fall asleep. So what do you recommend as a wind down routine or something to counteract that active mental activity?
I think everyone's wind down routine is going to be very unique and special to them. So for me, I like a hot shower. I like to dim the lights in my environment as much as I can. In the summertime, I won't use any lights at all and I'll just have natural light coming in. And so whenever the sun starts to set, then my body clock kind of goes with it. I like to do some yoga and deep breathing and having some calming music. But what I'm describing may sound terrible to someone else. So it's going to be unique and different to whatever it is that you like and you enjoy and you find relaxing. So maybe that means listening to a podcast. Maybe it's this one. Maybe it means dimming the lights in your environment, but maybe you're packing your lunch for tomorrow or you're getting your kids' clothes ready for the next day. Things that need to be done, but you're maybe doing them in a slow, mindful manner. So your wind down routine can look like a lot of different things, but something that's going to be relaxing and not stress inducing. That's what we really want.
Listening to boring books.
You just grabbed another topic that I wanted to jump onto, and that's listening to some audio material as a means to help fall asleep. I've done this with mixed success, listening to audiobooks that I find relaxing. So does listening to audiobooks, say boring ones or boring podcasts, help sleep? And if so, how long do you recommend people listen to them?
So if this is something that you're interested in and that you want to try, you don't have anything to lose by trying it, but I would definitely put on a sleep timer. And I would say like a sleep timer of like 10 or 15 minutes would be a nice option because just like what you were describing, laying your head down in bed and then like the thoughts just start to go, that's a very common experience for people. And so if it helps you to listen to a sleepy story, that's very popular right now, or a podcast or something that's not going to be exciting or riling you up, I'm okay with that, but I don't want you to sleep with that all night long. What I'd rather see you do is use that as a small tool to be able to fall asleep. So setting a sleep timer for 10 to 15 minutes, seeing how that works for you. Again, if you're using the tracker document, it does have an area where you can write down what you did to wind down. And if you try it for a couple of nights, then you can track, okay, this was really useful for me, or I don't really think that this made a difference. So you can try it out, but I definitely recommend not having it play all night long.
Okay.
Sleeping positions.
Next one, sleeping positions. I frequently go to bed or fall asleep on my side and I wake up and I'm on my back. So is there an optimal position? Sometimes everybody's different that way, but what's your wisdom on that piece?
I can actually tell you what the least optimal position is, and that's the position that I sleep in, which is laying flat on your stomach. That one is normally the hardest, and whenever we take inventory of what sleep position people usually are in, laying flat on your stomach face down is usually the position in which the least amount of people usually do, because that can often come with neck aches, with low back aches. First and foremost, I would say what's most comfortable for you, and you will move around throughout the night. You'll toss and turn a little bit. You may end up with less covers or more covers, but I would say oftentimes whenever we're talking about first responders, pain goes hand in hand with sleep. And so whenever it comes to being in pain, whatever position that you can find where you are comfortable and that you can allow sleep to come on, I would say that's the best position for you. If you're someone who snores, and we can kind of go down the road of obstructive sleep apnea, but if you're someone who snores, you could try laying on your back and then having some pillows kind of propping you up and see if that helps you a little bit. So that's an option for you too. If snoring is a long-standing problem and it's something that other people complain to you about, then it's time to see a doctor and get tested for obstructive sleep apnea, because that's untreated obstructive sleep apnea is no joke. It's very serious.
Yeah, we got into a little bit about talking about some of the modifications or new designs for fire stations that or even alerting systems when there's a dispatch. Check out Responder Resilience, Dr. Leah Kaylor, and that. You can find out more about those aspects, which are exciting that they're starting to become utilized more and designed into stations more.
Late night snacks.
A lot of times we come back from a call. It might be a call at 11 o'clock at night, come back at midnight to the firehouse. Maybe we're hungry. What are your thoughts about having a late night snack at that point? Good thing, bad thing? And if so, what, if you're going to have something, what do you recommend?
So I would say, listen to your body. Are you hungry because you are hungry, or are you hungry because everybody else is eating and that looks good and that smells good? So just checking in with your own body. The body is not supposed to be eating and digesting at night. It's significantly less efficient whenever we're doing that at night. Yeah, you may come back from a call and it's been hours and hours since you last ate, and maybe you were working very strenuously and you are genuinely hungry. And if that's the case, go ahead and eat. But I would say trying not to make a major habit out of that, because whenever we're eating late at night and we're digesting late at night, then our body just isn't going to be getting sufficient deep rest, because the body is busy digesting at a time when it's really not supposed to be. If we're talking about whenever a person who is awake during the daytime and they're normally sleeping at night, that is the time when the body is resting and it's repairing itself. And that is the opportunity for the pancreas, the liver, the small intestine, all these organs to get a scheduled rest break. And when we are eating and we're busy digesting during that time, then those organs, you're getting shortchanged. So I would say, listening to your body, are you truly hungry? If you are, go ahead, nourish yourself. But if you're not, and it just smells good, or that pizza looks amazing, maybe try and have a little self-control. I realize that that's very challenging, but yes, the body is not necessarily made to be digesting at night. And when we're doing that time and time and time again, then that's when we're starting to get into issues of the body not using glucose properly. We're having some issues with metabolism. We're having some issues with potentially moving into diabetes. We're moving into issues with obesity. So there's a lot of different things that kind of go hand in hand there. So it's a challenging question to answer, but that's what I would say is my best answer for you.
Okay. Yeah. Challenging is the key word.
It is. First responders are.
The Boy Scouts always drop off 6 pizzas, the night right after dinner, and then you've already eaten, and then they're sitting there in the kitchen, and then you come back at
smell good.
1 o'clock in the morning. You're like, yeah, it smells good. Maybe I'll just have a slice.
3 tactical takeaways.
Okay, let's wrap up with 3 tactical takeaways. These are actionable items firefighters can use to enhance their health, their performance. So, Dr. Leah, what are your 3 tactical takeaways?
So first and foremost, I would say finding things that are relaxing to you and then building that into a wind down routine, because as the nature of the work of being a firefighter, you're going to be called out at all different crazy times. And then you're going to find yourself back at the fire station and it's time for you to fall back asleep. And so you have to find things that are going to be relaxing and soothing for you personally to get to a state of sleepiness. I would say the second thing is that if you find yourself you're struggling with stress that feels very overwhelming, or anxiety or depression, or you're having a hard time dealing with the traumas that you see, because you certainly do, maybe it's time to look into these modalities that we talked about, like EMDR, like brain spotting. And I'll make sure that we have resources in the description, but certainly feel free to listen to the other episode on responder resilience so you can get even more details. But I think that this might be a really nice option for people who just aren't familiar with it and who are maybe interested, but not interested in talking. So this might be like a really nice middle ground for you. And then when you have control over your sleep environment and, when you're at the firehouse, maybe not so much so, but when you do have control and you're in your own home or you're in your own environment, it's going to be really important that is going to be cool, quiet, and dark. So doing whatever it is that you need to, as far as working with the thermostat, having blackout curtains, having an eye mask, having earplugs, having a white noise machine, whatever it is that you need to do to make that room dark, cool, and quiet so you can have the best setup for allowing yourself the most optimal amount of sleep that you can get.
I'm excited about your book coming out in October. Yeah, If Sleep Were a Drug. Where can people find you, find the book, and anything else you want to share?
Yeah, everywhere. I'm at Dr. Leah Kaylor, so you can find me on social media, on LinkedIn. That's also the name of my website. And then if you wanted to reach out, you can find me at info@drleahkaylor.com, and that's where you can send an email.
Perfect. Well, it's been fun having this kind of a barrage of information. I just think some of it,
Yes.
I wish I had known so much of this when I was still working. And fortunately, though, I think we're starting to see the fire service move into a new era of understanding how important sleep is and respecting what it takes to optimize firefighter sleep. Let's say it like that. So Thank you for all the work you're doing across the board with first responders, sharing this information through your book, through doing podcasts, and everything else you're doing. It's an amazing service that is so well needed.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And yes, I hope that this is not just something that people listen to, but something that they implement. So I'm so excited to have been here, and I appreciate you. And hopefully this isn't the last episode that we'll be together.
All right. I hope so too. So thanks for watching Igniting the Shift Within. Join us next time to hear more from the game changers who are shaping our profession. You can check out our website at podpage.com/igniting and make sure to like and follow Firefighter Nation on YouTube, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and their website, firefighternation.com. Until next time, stay safe, stay connected, keep igniting the shift within.
There are two things firefighters dislike: the way things are and change.
Sometimes traditional ways clash with the need for change.
That's where we come in.
Slicing through the noise with insights that matter.
Welcome to Igniting the Shift Within. Your launch pad to revolutionize the way you think and work and lead.